Hello and welcome to the Faith Building Podcast, episode 8, with your amazing hosts,
Vladi, Kuna, and
Norman Gräter. And today the topic is getting even greater. We touched base what we started in episode 7 with relationships and decided that the 5 love languages by Gary Chapman, he wrote a beautiful book, or even more than one, about the topic, will be our golden thread for today. And I'm not sure if you have heard about the 5 love languages. If not, let me give it to you in a minute. The idea behind the 5 love languages basically that Gary Chapman says, and I totally agree, and Vladi as well, we all speak one love language, 1 out of 5. And the love language we speak, we project it by giving love. And it will be more clear when you know the 5. The funny thing is, we receive love as well, but usually not in the same way. Like the language we like to speak, we don't like to receive. Let me give you the 5 love languages that it's even more clear what we talk about. The number 1 love language is words of affirmation. Words of affirmation, which means you praise someone. You say, hey, you're doing good, you're so awesome, you did a good job. Just words of affirmation that whatever the other person did was well. Number 2 is quality time. This is for people that say, hey, I want to spend quality time with my friends, with my best buddies, going to a bar, going to the movies, going into the woods and taking the dog for a walk. Whatever quality time means for you, but that's very important. And that's how you share love with someone, to say, hey, I spend my time with you and together we have quality time. Love language number 3 is physical touch, which means you like kissing, touching, and doing all the other funny things that adults usually do. Physical touch. This is your way how you share or how you receive love. Acts of service is number 4. Love language number 4, acts of service. You like that someone helps you, or you like to help someone in the kitchen, with the garage, with the house, with the kids, with building something, with the internet, whatever it might be. Love language number 5 is receiving or giving gifts. There are people like myself, I admit, I like to give gifts. This is how I share my love, or I did in the past. It's changing a little bit lately, and we can talk about that in a minute. Giving or receiving gifts, some people love to give gifts, and that's the way how they share love, and others like to receive gifts, and this is how they receive love. And these are the 5 love languages, and everyone, like I said, has 1 love languages that you share love with others. And to make it very precise, I take my example. Giving gifts is the language I speak, where I say, if I give my spouse Anke something, love, I give gifts. But if I want to receive love, she could give me gifts back, but this would not trigger anything, because this is not the love languages that fills my love tank. My love tank is filled by physical touch. And this is usually where the trouble comes at home. You speak one language and you have another one that fills your cup. But if the other one works on other languages, you don't get together. Let's say if giving gifts is my love language, but the love languages that fills Anke's cup is quality time, I can give her as many gifts as I want. She just will not be happy and feel loved. Now that she puts all my gifts to the side, gives me a feeling of being not loved as well. Which means I did so many things, I gave so many gifts, but she puts them away. She does not love me. And she on her side says, he gives me all those gifts, but why don't we spend time together? So we usually are on the same level, but we speak different languages. It's like English and French, or German and Nigerian language. It's basically you say the same thing, but it's a different language. You don't understand the other one. And that's our goal for today in today's podcast, to educate with those 5 love languages, that you know what's my language, what's the language that I want to receive, and what's the language of my partner, my spouse, my business partner, that they feel loved. Because as we touched last time, we all want to be loved, and that's the main key.
it's such a great topic. And the 5 languages we use all the time, whether we realize that or we don't. So you may be actually thinking, what am I doing actually? And sometimes it's really even sitting down and looking, because we had a conversation with Norman just before we started talking, and it made me realize that there are things which were obvious for me because I've used that for a long time. But then, especially when you're focusing on your self-growth and transformation, and really, I think it's age thing as well, because it comes down to how many experiences we had in our life and the quality of wisdom we use in a longer term, rather than they do say the best wine is the most mature one, right? So if we think it from that point, but really it's, are you aware what your language is and what your partner's language is? Are you actually aware of what you love receiving and what you love giving? Meaning the language, which language you use, or which, like Norman said, which language you speak. And it really changed. Listening to Norman, it made me realize that, like you go through a life, and obviously it's the times when we start really young and we fall in love and we don't have any experiences. And especially with those initial relationships, I remembered it was like, if I just find one partner from one life and that's it, I never have to look at other guy again, which we all know that that's not even possible, even though you may have a partner for a whole life. But it's the quality of growth and really self-love and self-growth that comes into seeing beauty in everyone and everything, and enjoying each other's company and finding peace as well. It comes down to you wanting to come home from your busy lives and feeling that space where you can just be yourself. And this is a very dear subject to Norman, Be Yourself Academy, which he has. But when you are yourself and truly, fully work on yourself and your way of vibration, really, it is the vibrational alignment. Are you happy with yourself? Should start before, can I make someone else happy? And as we mentioned in the last episode, yes, you figure out, or you talk, communicate with your partner. Am I 50 or am I 80? I'm boosting with love and joy today. I can just cover the world. And then there may be a day where you just even can't get out of the bed. You feel one of those days there. But physical touch really comes down to something that goes all the way to the childhood. And I love that Norman actually touched upon it, because I know that's my husband's language he would love to receive. And I am also a giver. So I do express myself through giving gifts, because it gives me really joy. I feel love and appreciation, and especially in finding out what would be the perfect gift for the person. I really enjoy it. But now, like Norman mentioned, sometimes if the person on the other side would actually appreciate more if I sat down with them and gave them a hug, it doesn't mean for them maybe as much, but we take it wrongly sometimes. So actually, if once you understand all these languages and really start applying them, or just be aware of how to do this right, you can improve the quality of your relationships on many levels. So words of affirmations, I'll just touch upon that one. That was something I really needed before I started studying these amazing materials and personal development, and really working on myself and growing myself and boosting my confidence and really working on self-esteem and all the stuff. Words of affirmations was something that I would love as a top language. That was the language I'd love to receive before, because it made me feel I'm good enough in those things where I didn't feel my void. So those holes Norman mentioned in the last episodes, those holes we have in our pot and we need to seal, that was kind of sealing my pot, but I didn't realize it was the wrong way of sealing them, because if you have the outside world, meaning the people around you approving you and you feeling the approval and affirmations to need to feel good enough, I'm still not dealing with the cause. I'm still just dealing with the effect. And remember, cause and effect law is really powerful. So we have to go all the way to the cause and change it for us to live that amazing love life. And that was something that I've realized, that obviously once I've sealed most of those holes where I felt I am worthy, I don't care what other people say or think about me, because I know I'm a worthwhile person. And if there are people who just can't take me the way I am, I'm not saying we need to be self-critical, and constructive criticism is really helping us all to grow because we learn how to get better. And we should always, that should be our every aim. Everybody's aim should be one thing, to be a better and greater version of yourself every day. And stop comparing yourself to others, because that is a huge part of the language as well. Comparing yourself, what did the partner do? Do I have to do the same? And you feel like this competition. He's done most of the days. Norman touched upon this with the acts of service. Oh, but he's done 10 chores and I haven't done any. And then we start saying, oh, but you need to do something because I did this and you didn't do that. And, this can end in a very long quarrel. But what about saying, I feel 80% today, so I can cover it all? And the great relationship would, the other person knows that. You don't need approval because they feel it, they appreciate it. And that is the attitude that can change and will massively positively impact your relationship, how you express yourself. What do you think, Norman?
I totally agree. And when you shared that your love languages was words of affirmation a couple of years ago, I thought about myself and I have to agree. And I think that's something that many of us drag along. I'm just being reminded of a documentary about Arnold Schwarzenegger on Netflix that I watched a couple months ago, where you actually can see, if you listen a little bit between the lines, what he's actually saying, that the household he's from, his family is very competitive. His father was very competitive. The two boys always had to go against each other, who gets the most beautiful flowers for Mother's Day or who does more push-ups and stuff like that. So it was always about being seen or being appreciated by the father. And as Arnold was the little one, I assume most of the time his brother received the words of affirmation because he's the bigger one, he's stronger one, he's more grown up and stuff like that. And you can hear in this interview from time to time how desperate Arnold is looking for these words of appreciation. Now something funny happened, and this relates me so much to my own story. He chose to be a bodybuilder. He found his joy in bodybuilding. But his mother called the doctor because she said, my boy is sick. Every boy in his age has some beautiful posters of girls on the wall, but my boy has naked man in oil pushing weights. He must be sick. So she called the doctor. And his father said, if you want to get muscles, you can chop wood, but this bodybuilding posing, it's just for the ego. That's not a real job. Here in Austria, where we are from, we play soccer or we go skiing, which means the parents were totally against the dream of Arnold. And for his whole life, all that he accomplished, and I think he's the most successful person in the world, being on the top of the game in 3 different categories. I don't know anyone who is that successful in 3 categories, like politics, movies, and bodybuilding. He has achieved everything you could achieve in this specific area. He is still driven by this lack of words of appreciation. By now his father is with the Lord. And what I thought, his latest book is called Be Useful. And that's something he mentions in the interview. That's what his father always said. Arnold, be useful. Which means he dedicates something that the father said to his father by writing a book about it. But he will never ever get the words of appreciation by his father because he's on the other side with the Lord already. His whole drive is he did not receive the words of appreciation. And this brought me to my story. I never received words of appreciation. And I wanted it. I longed for it. I aimed for it. All the success I had in my life up to 2019, I would say. This is where it changed, where I got really stuck with the 5 love languages and learned something. Everything that I did was based on the fact that at one point my father will come around and say, well done, or I love you. Either one would have worked. Yeah. But this never happened. So I was running after this ghost, this love languages that I thought I deserve or that I need or that I want, until I realized that he loved me all his life. Just not through words of affirmation, but through receiving, or in his case, giving gifts. He would give his last shirt for me if I would need it. So he was always there in the way of money or material things to support me, which means he showed love all my life. I was just looking the other direction and said, the only way I receive love or I want to receive love is through words of affirmation. And since I know that, my whole life, my whole motivation changed. I kind of fell in a hole in the beginning because all my drive, all this being driven towards a goal just disappeared because my engine was gone. Like I always longed for words of appreciation. And now that I changed that, it's totally different. But you have to realize that sometimes our main engine why we go after things is exactly based on those 5 love languages, that we think we don't get the love we deserve. Probably, and have a look at that, probably you do. It's just a different language.
I love what you said, and I'm going to actually elaborate on the parenting because really it comes down to childhood, to all of us. And going even deeper than the 5 languages now, think about the 5 languages and conditioning. Like we're talking about paradigms and we're talking about how we transform. So it really happens watching our parents. And now you're aware of the 5 love languages. Think about what Norman was just saying as a great example. He really demonstrated how we didn't realize we watched our parents and their love language. And also we were told what are certain standards to be a perfect wife and what are certain standards to be a perfect husband. And really, maybe you haven't, but most of the cultures, and certainly the culture where I grew up, was always wife had to be the perfect mother, the perfect wife, the perfect everything. The household had to be just perfect, and the cooking and baking. And unless you covered all those jobs and everybody was really taken care of from a physical point of view as well, mainly, and obviously emotional point, you weren't a great mother. And these are some of the statements which are made, still are made in some countries. And then some of the girls feel like, oh my goodness, like it doesn't matter what you do, it's just never enough. And some of these languages can actually be then we attract a partner. And if we use the example I was talking about in the last episode of someone we have a fear, we put so much fear into not attracting someone who's a drinker or who's a drug user or who's I don't know, whatever it is. And then we do attract that and we find that challenges, and then these love languages and conditioning even adds to the whole situation. And now person just gets into the point is like, what am I doing wrong? It's firstly asking wrong question, because you're never doing anything wrong. We can always get better and greater. But coming from the point when you stop today and say, what can I do right now, from now on, and just do one thing every day, that will be really something talking in the sense of the 5 languages, and figure out as a first initial thing, really find out what is the language I speak and what is the language I hear. Because really, that was such a great and profound explanation Norman did. And I've written a note saying culture and good and bad. Sometimes parents labeled us that you were a good boy for doing certain things, or good girl. And we always wanted to please our parents, right? Because that's how children want to please the parents. We are looking for this approval, which comes to the words of affirmations, mainly, I'd say. And then we bring these later years into marriage and partnerships and business partnerships, where we feel if I do all these things, I'm going to be considered good. But unless you have someone from the same environment, that's not true. And now we're creating stories and assumptions in our mind which are not truth, and they are not serving your relationship. We are coming to say, well, what have I done? You know, like it doesn't matter what I do. He's just not seeing this. And I can speak for many females, but it isn't that he's not seeing it in so many times. It's just they appreciate it. They're just expressing it differently. And for us, we need to really slow down. And I really think what is missing, and I'm going to put my hand up because, you know, we all can get better at this, is much better communication with people you love and study, and, you know, you really get along. So I'm talking about the vibration. I mean, we have this amazing vibration in between ourselves, and there are people you click with and there are people you don't. This is how you fell in love first. You just clicked in. There wasn't any explanation. You knew nothing about the person and their background, and you just loved them with the whole full package. And you couldn't care less whether that person comes with whatever they're coming with, because you knew that you can conquer the world with that person no matter what crap comes at you, and you will be the happiest, and you're already planning a wedding and children, like going to female's mind, obviously, right now. It was just one of those things. That what happens when you look and you hear these people who say, well, I've been married 20 years. Oh, God, like every marriage should be. Because we firstly lose that fascination and enthusiasm and the sparkle where we're willing to take an extra mile with that person. And we are not the same people because we are allowing more of the assumptions and we're focusing more on the differences. We come home, it's like, oh, he's just like his father. And everybody else sees that, but the person will say, I'm nothing like my father, or I'm not like my mother. Even I mean, if my husband sometimes says, you sometimes like your mom, I'm not like my mom.
Yes,
And
because we
obviously,
hated it so much that we said we want to be totally different. And on the outside, due to the conditioning, we're exactly the same.
and isn't it funny because we love our parents, but that's where our focus goes with that statement. It doesn't go to the qualities that that person has. It goes immediately to all the things we see wrong with that person. So that's the attitude we were mentioning to you guys last episode and this episode, and you'll hear it over and over again because attitude, Earl Nightingale called it a magic word. We both studied it for years with Norman. We had to listen to this recording, which our mentor gave us to listen for 300 days, and it was over, and the attitude was just, but it's profound to understand because it's not about Norman's train situation. Really bring this into a point where it doesn't matter what happens because the thing that happens is not important. It's how do you react or respond to it and what attitude you have. Do you have a phenomenal attitude or do you have an absolutely terrible attitude?
Yes, and it brings us back to what the basic energy is you have, and if you have enough self-love. As Vladi and I spoke before we pressed record about words of affirmation, so many of us say we need that. And I realized that while listening to Vladi, especially women, not women in particular, but people that are more in their female energy, they usually have more a lack of safety than the ones that are more in the male energy. And probably we speak about the female and male energy a little bit deeper in the next episode. And stay with the love languages. The more you love yourself, I realize for myself, the less words of affirmation I need.
Yes.
The more I am the creator of my life, the more I'm the master of my soul, the captain of my ship, the more I'm convinced that whatever I do or say or how authentic I am is totally okay. I don't need anyone tapping me on the shoulder and say, oh, good job. Of course, everybody appreciates words of affirmations when people realize you did a good job. Still, as Vladi said, find out a language that you share, how you give love, and I think that's a pretty easy one. What out of those 5 is the easiest one for you where you say, this goes very fluent without thinking about it. I do it on a regular basis. And on the other side, you will also know what language you will have that fills your love tank. Now, the challenge might be, what's the love language of my partner or my child? First of all, just have a look. And you can go through all 5, not at the same time, of course, but give somebody a compliment, words of affirmation, and see if their eyes light up. And if they just say, thank you, you say, okay, that's not it. Then try quality time. Sit down on the couch and start talking to them. And if, especially with the kids, if they want to disappear after 2 minutes because they want to go back to their cell phone or whatever they do, it's not quality time. Physical touch, just go and hug them or hug your partner, put a hand on their leg or on the shoulder, or just get more physical and see if they really like it, or if they move away, then that's not it. Acts of service, can I help you with something? If they always say no thank you, that's not it. And receiving gifts, the same thing. If you bring them gifts from a business trip or from grocery shopping, Just see how their reaction is. If they don't touch it for a week, that's not it. And of course, the easiest way would be tell them about the 5 love languages and ask them, what do you favor out of those 5? The moment you know that, you can give so much love in the language that the other one really speaks, that your whole relationship will change. It's the same with business relationships. If you find out in an instant what out of those 5 the other one favors and you give them more of them, they will feel loved. And we all know that if you feel loved, you like to love as well, which means if you give them something that they feel loved, they like to give myself something that I love. And the more precise I am in my communication and don't let them in the dark and say, now you have to try to find out my love language. No, just tell them and say, hey, if you want to make me happy, just help me with doing this or doing that, or listen to me or spend time with me. So be very aware. And this is why God gave us 2 ears and just 1 mouth. The moment you're still speaking, you cannot listen what the other one wants. So use your ears, just be open, be flexible, and don't be focused only on the language that you like to give. With some, it works. With others, it doesn't. And last example from my side, I always gave gifts. Like I was a one-on-one copy of my father that I did not favor at that time. I wanted to spend quality time and get the words of affirmation. I became the same. My love language became giving gifts. And my daughter, she is over 20 by now, she loved to receive gifts as a young girl. And this worked perfectly. But becoming and turning into a teenager, this whole thing shifted. So from the little pink pony, we start bringing her stuff from Victoria's Secrets. And I remember this one occasion, I came back with a bag, with a baseball hat, with some nice underwear things that Anke chose for her. This bag was still sitting in her room, totally untouched, for half a year. And whenever I saw this bag, I felt, oh, she does not love me. And she probably looking at the bag thought, he does not love me. What do I want to do with this stupid stuff? And now for this year's Christmas, for the first time, I did not give gifts, but I gave time. So everyone in my close circle received time, 1 day with me in 1 hour slot. So they had little tickets they can cash in basically or use the whole day. And she was so thankful that she wrote me afterwards, this is what I really wanted. Just time with me. If I would not have known it before, now it would have clicked that I say, she wants to spend quality time with me and not gifts. So if you know your love language and the love languages of your partner or your child, life is so much easier.
Norman, it brought me to a quick story. I love what you've done with your daughter. I remember hearing someone, and I can't remember, it was somewhere on the TV a long time ago. So I'm not going to quote who it was, but they said every couple should make a date night every week and just go and spend time together, not talking about the job. Because obviously what we tend to end up talking about is either kids or money situation, if you're in, I'm talking marriage partnerships, and obviously problems at work, or people who focus on problems, or genuinely joy of the work. But can you actually have a conversation with your own partner and a husband about something else than those 3 things? Leave the kids, leave the financials, and leave the work, and talk about you. And I remember when we sat down, and we can touch upon it next week when we talk about the female male energy. I went through a course which was there was a game, so they get us playing game together, and we had to stop and allow the other person to say the whole thing without interruption. I found that we both found it very difficult because we wanted to make our point right there, right then. And that goes back to what Norman said. You want to be right? You just want to be happy. And it really is that we interrupt each other so much that we don't allow the other person to fully explain what they really mean. And if you just hear part of the story, you take it out of the context and never really understand what happens. And that we can I will talk about the movie next week. next episode, but really the date night. Just spend time together. And maybe what you could do, and that's the final thing from me, and I will say goodbye, is as Norman said, the 5 love languages. How about you put them down, line them up, and actually take 100% in a blocks of 10s and start adding the 10 blocks and use the, obviously you only have 10 because we have to come up to 100, because I'm going to do this myself. As we were both telling you today, how we're changing the languages and how we different, how certain things change through its personal development, or maybe your love life changes or whatever changes you had in life. Really figure out which one of those 5 languages has the most blocks. So what is the biggest percentage in there? Because, looking at all of them, you probably use a bit of each, but which one is the dominant one? We're looking for you to find out which one is the dominant one you speak and the dominant one you'd love to receive. And that's all from me, and I look forward to hearing you next. Well, thank you for listening to us or watching us, and I'll be with you next week.
Absolutely. And then we speak about the male and the female energy. Till next week.
Great.
Bye bye.
Bye.